Hello and welcome to the Gist on StratNewsGlobal. Good evening, I'm Surya Gangadharan and you're on the Gist. We are going to analyze the 23rd summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. As you're aware, it ended in Delhi today, a short while ago. It was hosted by Prime Minister Modi, where all the 8 leaders of the heads of state of the SCO who were present online, of course. And there have been various outcomes. I have with me my guest who's going to explain exactly about these outcomes and where we are going with them. Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, former ambassador to Kazakhstan. So, welcome, glad to have you.
Thank you very much, Surya. Always a pleasure to be with you.
So, what do you make of what would you say are the main takeaways of this summit?
I think it is the first time that India was chairing the summit. We have chaired what is known as the Council of the Heads of Governments, that is, of the
Yeah.
Prime Ministers. That was 2 years ago in 2020. And this was the first time after we became a full member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in 2017 that we are chairing the heads of state, that is the highest body as far as the SU is concerned. So I guess in terms of all the decisions, the policy decisions, they are taken here. We have been in the chair of the presidency for the last 1 year. In fact, we took over from Uzbekistan in Samarkand last year in 2022. You would recall that was the time when Prime Minister Modi had famously made that comment to President Putin that this is not an
Yeah.
era of war when we are talking about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And that, of course, has had its own reverberations and traction in global discussions, global debates. So we have been in the chair for the last not a full year, although our presidency will last till the end of September. But up to now, it has been about 8, 9 months. And I would say that India has acquitted itself very creditably. As the Prime Minister said, that we have organized more than 140 meetings, events, gatherings, conferences, seminars. Out of this, about 15 of them have been at the level of ministers. And I think what we've also done is, something that Surya, we've tried to do with G20 also, that we are
Yeah.
organizing about 200 meetings in about 55 different cities of India. So here also, we have tried to make the SCO, in addition to being a government-led organization, that there should be an increased people's participation. So whether it is having a film festival, whether it is participation in the Suraj Kund Crafts Mela, in terms of organizing programs, we identified Varanasi, Kashi as the first tourism capital of the SCO. And we organized a large number of programs there, promoted tourism there. So we had programs in very many cities of the country. For instance, in May, just about 2 months ago, when we had the meeting of the foreign ministers, that was organized in Goa, as you might recall. So I think there have been a number of new initiatives also taken by India. We set up five vertical discussion groups, including something like traditional medicine, empowerment of youth in terms of more sort of startups and innovations in terms of digital inclusion. So, about five of these verticals in which India has strengths and India can contribute to the outcomes and so that these countries can benefit from that. And we have had two special working groups that have been created. One is on
Yeah.
traditional medicines, and the other is on startups and innovations. And the
Yeah.
last point that I would like to make is that in addition to the New Delhi Declaration, we have also had two additional documents that have been adopted on very important issues. One is on the issue of de-radicalization, because terrorism is an issue that afflicts not only one country but many countries in the world. And SCO is also very much focused on how to deal with this whole issue of terrorism. And the second is on digitization in terms of digital payment infrastructure, what India has used very effectively over the last few years. So I would say that looked at from the perspective of India, I think this has been a very successful tenure of this organization, and India has provided a great deal of many new directions in which the organizations can evolve and develop.
So you mentioned terrorism, and I'd like to draw your attention to the Prime Minister's address at the summit, where he appeared to indicate some disappointment with the SEO stance on cross-border terrorism. He said they should criticize the perpetrators of such terrorism. What's your comment on this?
I think it becomes very difficult when you have in the same room the perpetrators themselves are also placed, and then the supporters of those perpetrators are also there. And that supporter is the one who was responsible for the setting up of this particular organization from the very beginning. When it
Yeah,
came up as Shanghai 5 in 1996,
yeah,
this China was the main protagonist of getting the five countries together. And in 2001, when it transformed into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization by inclusion of Uzbekistan, then also China, along with some help from Russia. So, and we know how China has always been backstopping Pakistan as far as its terrorist activities are concerned, even not only in the SCO, but even as far as the United Nations Security Council 1267 committee is concerned. When we are talking about the designation of terrorists in that committee, then China will come forward and put up these technical holds or vetoes, or even in the case of most recently Sajid Mir, a permanent block as far as his designation is concerned. So, it does become difficult, although the whole issue of separatism, extremism, and terrorism, they are mentioned very frontally. But
yeah,
that was used by China. In fact, if I could very briefly tell you the history, basically it was introduced so that China could deal with the extremist Uyghur movement, the East Turkestan Islamic
yeah,
movement. And
yeah,
basically, it was put in so that the countries would rally around China, get together to deal with this whole issue of ETIM. Maybe at that time, it was not really known that the organization will expand. It will get in other terrorist groups also that it will have to deal with. So I would say that we have this regional anti-terrorism structure that is based in Uzbekistan, in Tashkent, since 2005. And basically, it is in terms of the manner in which it operates is like most other similar organizations operate. That is in terms of exchange of information, sharing of information. And RATS claims that it has been able to stop more than hundreds of terrorist actions by sharing information with the concerned countries. But of course, when we are talking about Surya, about the cross-border terror, then those issues really come out of the purview of the RATS organization, and it becomes extremely difficult for countries to identify one particular member state. And this also flies to an extent in the face of the fact that we are not supposed to raise bilateral issues. That is uh, one of the understandings, one of the given as far as such organizations are concerned, that you don't raise bilateral issues. And cross-border terrorism really does come down to
bilateral thing.
an
Yeah,
issue between India and Pakistan. So when we have to deal with it, we have to deal with it the way we have been doing, whether it is in terms of the surgical strikes against the Uri attack or the
Yeah.
Balakot
Mm.
against the Pulwama attack.
So, coming to the other point the PM made about whether the SCO organization was geared for modern day challenges and for the challenges of the future. What was he implying here? What was he trying to say?
I think there is a sense of dissatisfaction amongst people who have dealt with the organization because, as I said, it is a Chinese dominated organization, but of course, it's an important organization. I think
Yeah.
one needs to be cognizant of that because it covers about 40%, more than 40% of the global population, and
Yeah.
it covers more than 33% of the global GDP in purchasing power parity terms. So it's a very important organization, and for India, it is extremely important to stay engaged with this particular organization because this whole region of Central Asia and Eurasia is a part of our extended neighborhood, which the
Yeah.
Prime Minister today in his commentary he said that it is a part of our extended family. It's not a neighborhood, but it's a family. And when we are talking about of course, we are very much focused on the Indo-Pacific, that we need to work there. We need to have the Malabar exercises. We need to have the Quad. We need to have the IPEF. I think we should not be forgetting about our interests in the Eurasian landmass, in the Eurasian continent, Central Asia, Caucasus, etc., etc. So I think that is very important. It has the organization has really not been able to meet its objectives very effectively, and I could give you a few examples if you would want.
So,
That
are you? So let me just interrupt you here.
Yeah,
Are you
sure.
saying SEO has not been able to measure up to its responsibility with respect to Central Asia? Is that what you're saying?
No, it is not in terms of, SCO is the broader organization. And what it says is that it has to maintain peace, security, stability. Now, has it been able to maintain that peace, security, stability in the region that it encompasses? And the examples that I was going to give you is really not. Because if you look at Afghanistan, whatever has been happening in Afghanistan, and even around 2021 when the United States was leaving, was the SCO, and we've had an Afghanistan contact group in the SCO since 2009. So
Yeah.
was the SCO visible anywhere? Was it really able to play a role in bringing about stability and giving a sense of peace and security? Not
So
really.
what does let me interrupt you again. What does
Yeah,
that
sure.
suggest about the SEO? Is it divided? Because some of the key guys there have their own games to play, whether in Afghanistan or Central Asia. Russia appears to be weakening, so in that sense, perhaps its profile is down. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
No, what I'm trying to tell you is that even if Russia had not weakened, if I take the situation as it prevailed on the 23rd of February 2022, that means just before the Ukraine conflict had
Yeah,
started, I think even at that time, because the changeover of power in Afghanistan, the move out of the US and the NATO and the ISAF forces, that
yeah.
really got completed in August of 2021, but still SU was not able to play a role there, nor has it been able to play a role. I'll give you another example, which I think in India and your viewers and listeners would not really be aware of, that there is a huge conflict on the border between two of the members, that is Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. Last
Mhm.
year in September, when the Samarkand summit was taking place, just about 200-250 kilometers away, there were violent clashes on the borders between Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, and more than 100 people died.
Uh-huh.
And the SEO had nothing to say about that. And that is because there is one big power, one big entity, that is China. and it sort of tends to run this organization as per its own interests. The SCO did not even make a statement on this conflict that was taking place just about few hundred kilometers away. And so there is a lack of coherence as far as this organization is concerned. There is a lack of cohesiveness because of the differential in power and authority amongst the members, particularly amongst the original six members, Russia
Yeah.
and China on one side, and the other four Central Asian countries on the other side. So I think there is a lot of reform, a lot of change that is required. Because you see, when the SU was formed in 2001, there have been a large number of very ambitious initiatives that have been taken. It was said that let us, all the SCO countries, enter into an FTA. And that decision was taken, but it was never taken forward. They said, let us have an SCO bank, let us have an SCO energy club. But nothing of that has really come about because China tends to use this organization for some purposes, while for others it goes into bilateral relations with these countries.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, it wants to import gas from Turkmenistan. It will do it on a bilateral basis.
Bilateral
It
deal.
wants to,
Yeah.
yeah, it wants to import oil from Kazakhstan. It will do it on a bilateral basis. So this SCO doesn't really come into the picture in that sense.
Mhm. So that's interesting. Let me come to another point here that the PM made about connectivity projects that must take into account sovereignty and territorial integrity of nations. Now, obviously, I think he was referring to the BRI. What's your take?
Oh, yes, absolutely, without a doubt. And, even more than the BRI, to the CPEC, to the China Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is an offshoot of the BRI, because it goes through Gilgit Baltistan, it goes through Pakistan occupied Kashmir. And that is why you would see that in all the declarations, and even the current declaration that would come out, it would say that there are six countries which support China's BRI project, except India. India is not
Yeah.
mentioned because India does not, want to be a part of it. And this has been the whole issue of territorial integrity and sovereignty is a very important part. But I think what the other countries have also started realizing is that it leads them into a debt trap. These projects are not economically viable. These
Yeah. Yeah.
projects do not create jobs for the host country. These projects don't bring in new technology for the host countries. So there are problems, but still, these, particularly in Central Asia and Pakistan, they find that they need the investment. The investment comes without any strings attached. So they're very happy to go along with that. But
So,
one last point here, if I could
yeah.
mention, Surya, is that the elite and the government governing classes might be quite happy in sort of, having very positive and warm and friendly and effusive relations with the China. But the people of many of these countries are very suspicious and very wary of the increasing Chinese presence.
Would you say China uses SCO in a matter that it deems fit, to leverage its own power, its own interests? Would you say SCO has become a handmaiden of China or is
No,
getting there?
I think it is not, if it had become a handmaiden, then it would have been taking all its projects through the SCO. As I mentioned, all its projects are really being conducted on a bilateral basis. And that is why I think it finds some limited utility for the SCO, so that it keeps some sort of controls, maintains its influence in the region, but while conducting its basic, uh, as far as its relations engagement with the region are concerned, on a bilateral basis. And now, as you're aware, it has tried to institutionalize this relationship by holding the not the first, the second, but the first in person China plus Central Asia
Yeah,
summit
yeah.
at Xi'an on the 18th of May. And there it is sort of, it will, as far as the utility of SCO in taking its own initiatives in this region, that will come down even further, because it will operate through the C plus C5 initiative.
Initiative, yeah. Sir, last question. You mentioned this earlier about China's preponderant power and the fact that Russia's writ is weakening in Central Asia. They even had that summit, as you mentioned, with the Central Asian states. So, where are we going really? What is the future of SCO?
Yeah, the future of SEO, I think it is expanding. We see that Iran has joined. We see that Belarus would be joining next year. I think we'll have to make sure that it does not turn into an anti Western alliance. It is not only India that doesn't want it to turn into an anti Western alliance, but it is all the four Central Asian countries. They have
Mhm.
excellent relations with the West, with the United States. Meaning, I can give you an example. There was a maiden, what is known as the Astana International Forum, that
Yeah.
was started in Astana, the capital of Kazakhstan, on the 8th of June, actually last month, just less than a month ago. And in that, there you had participation of people from the neighborhood, of course, from Central Asia, from Europe, from the United States. There was no participation from Russia. There was no participation from China. So they really want to ensure, and there have been statements which have been made by senior officials and ministers of Kazakhstan. And I'm mentioning about Kazakhstan because it is the largest country, not only in terms of area, but also in terms of GDP. I think Kazakhstan accounts for more than 70% of the GDP of the whole of Central Asia, and FDI and trade, etc., etc. And what these people said when sanctions were imposed on Russia after the Russia Ukraine conflict, that we are going to observe all the sanctions imposed by the West, because if there is going to be an iron curtain, then we don't want to be on the wrong side of that. And they have been sort of, welcoming all the Russians who are fleeing Russia, etc., etc. But the point there, also is that, when we are talking about the future of Central Asia, maybe we could give a thought to the future of, of SEO of Central Asia, also of these countries. And here, as you mentioned correctly, Surya, there is the influence of Russia is progressively declining. Earlier,
Mhm.
it used to be thought that Russia is the security provider and China will provide all the economic heft and so on and so forth. Don't take me wrong, Russia still continues to be a very important factor as far as Central Asia is concerned, but it definitely does not enjoy the same heft as it used to in the past. So China is, sensing an opportunity. China is feeling that there is a vacuum, and it should step into that, and it is trying to do that. And this Xi'an summit is, a move in that direction.
Indication of that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when Xi Jinping went his first visit after COVID to Kazakhstan last year, he said that China will ensure the security and stability of Kazakhstan. This was a message to Russia that, what you have done to Ukraine, don't think of doing that to Kazakhstan, because in Kazakhstan also you have 18-20% people of Russian ethnicity. But
Yeah.
that is, as far as the Central Asian countries are concerned, as I mentioned, they are wary. They are getting nervous. They are getting suspicious of the increasing presence of China. And so they have started looking outside to other options. They don't want to be, either or situation between Russia and China. And in that context, I think countries like India, they have good possibilities, they have good opportunities, and we have been both on a bilateral basis as also through the SCO. We have been trying to reach out to the Central Asian countries. As I said, we have had very ancient civilizational cultural links with them. And now we want to add on in terms of trade, in terms of investment. And we have so many strengths in terms of digitization, DPI, pharmaceuticals. So we would also like to strengthen our engagement with these countries.
So, looking ahead, very mixed prospects for SCO. Obviously, we'd like it to move forward. Less Chinese influence, we'd like to see that. And perhaps a more better balance in the relationship between China and Russia. But all that, we really don't know which way things are going. Ambassador Sajjanhar, pleasure talking to you, sir. Great perspective and insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Surya. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
And for those of you who joined us on this conversation, do subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media, Twitter. Thank you very much. Good night.